Hey, this is Sunil Ramlall. Today we will discuss the relevance of strategic compensation decisions and the impact on organization strategies. In doing so, we look at the impact to retain and first of all to attract, motivate, and of course retain qualified talent within the organization as a means to foster organizational capability. Organizational capability is after all modes of competition have been eroded. What's left? It's the human capital within the organization. So how then do we use strategic rewards as a means to motivate? To define motivation, we're saying what are the means in which we will allow and foster ways to enable employees to give a better effort, a deeper effort to achieve the organization's goals and objectives. So we share a few of the slides I'll be using here today. And we look at this from multiple perspectives. We look at the employer's view, and we're saying that pay is critical in attaining strategic goals. Of course, pay impacts employee attitudes and behaviors. Employee compensation is significant to organization cost. We look at the total cost, expenditures within an organization, and labor cost accounts for a significant portion of that. Second, we look at the employee's perspective. What are some of the policies regarding wages, salaries, and other earnings, and how they affect the overall income and standard of living? We have to ensure that both level of pay and fairness compared with others' pay are considered. So what goes into developing pay levels within an organization? First, we look at pay structure. Second, pay level. Third, job structure, and then pay policies. In doing so, we refer back to many of the organizational theories from 60s, 70s, one of which is the equity theory. So that you and I view fairness of the situations by comparing our pay with those of others. We compare our own ratio of perceived outcomes, what are the pay benefits, working conditions, to the input, that is the effort and ability experience, to the ratio of a comparison to others within the organization. External internal equity. These are again factors in determining how much we pay an employee, and are we going to be leading? Are we going to be at market? Are we going to be lagging? And these are some of the considerations. The consequences would be external employee movement, the labor cost, the employee attitudes. From an internal perspective, we look at promotions. Is there collaboration among employees? Uh, Sometimes we look at product market competition. That is where we sell goods and services at some quantity and price that will bring a return on investment. And then, of course, the labor market competition, the amount an organization must pay to compete with other organizations that hire similar employees. It does not necessarily mean only within an industry, but if you're in a particular geographic area, what's the competition like? Where could qualified labor, from where can qualified labor come? What's our competition? And who could actually take our qualified talent? Two components of labor cost. That's the average cost per employee. We look at wages, salaries, bonuses, health insurance, social security, etc. And then the staffing level, which would mean the number of employees within a particular group of employees. When we look at employees as a resource, we have to take into consideration that uh, how the employees really contribute to the competitive advantage of that organization. And you have to look at the philosophy that considers employees to be an investment that would yield some valuable return. That's the input. What are employees giving? We have them within the organization, and then the output. What are we getting out of that? And we could use the return on investment ratio to even get at that. Controlling costs through non-competitive pay can result in low employee productivity and quality. And as I mentioned, the component of are we going to be lagging? But then total compensation is what compensation we have to look at. As you have the dollar figures, but then you have the benefits, the environment, the vacations, and all of that. Those are all components of the whole um, total rewards. Pay policies and programs are important HR tools for encouraging desired employee behaviors and discouraging undesired behaviors. So if you are a company focused on innovation, for example, you have 3M, Apple, etc., they are more focused on innovation than creating new products. So your compensation strategy has to be aligned to where the behaviors are focused on research and development. For example, you do not penalize employees for maybe sunk cost. You that is, you may have invested in a product, but it came out to be a flop. So again, it's the environment you want to create, the behaviors, and positively reinforcing what you are trying to achieve from an organization strategy perspective. And deciding what to pay, it's discretionary. It's based on a broad range. The organization has to decide whether to pay at, below, above market range. And one of those theories that we look at is efficiency wage theory, and wages influence worker productivity. And this is a class by itself, actually. Um, where what are we giving and what are we getting out of that? In deciding to how much to pay, we also have to do what's called benchmarking, and that's a procedure by which an organization compares its own practices against the competition. Again, that competition is just not within our industry, but outside of industry, outside of the country, within the country, however it might be. You have to decide what's your competition. In doing so, in doing a benchmark, you have to consider which employees should be included in survey, which jobs are included in survey, if multiple surveys are used, how are all rates of pay weighted and combined. Many organizations, professional organizations, such as the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, as we call it fondly, they do national surveys on a regular basis. For example, in Minnesota here, you have the Employers Association, what used to be called Employers Association, and other organizations do this sort of surveys where they get organizations to participate, share their numbers. In academia, we do it all the time, where we go to different universities and then we sort them by uh, departments and colleges, assistant, associate, full, etc. Product market and labor market comparisons. When you're looking at product market, uh, we're looking at labor costs representing a large share of total cost. Product demand is elastic. The supply of labor is inelastic. There's only a fixed number of qualified talent. Employee skills are specific to the product market. And then labor market value, when attracting and retaining qualified employees is difficult. Cost of recruiting replacements are also high. And as you look at the more positions, I should say, sorry, uh, we uh, we get into limited supply of that key talent. So that's when sometimes we have to pay substantially more for a limited number. What's a limited number of available talent or expertise within a particular area? Rate ranges, we're looking at different employees in same job that may have different pay rates for one reason or another. Again, we do have to ensure that we are being legal, and Fair Labor Standards Act, all of those are in play. Sometimes, though, there might be some unique circumstances where an employee, maybe based on some limited expertise, we need that expertise and may have to pay higher. How do we go about developing a job structure? Basically, first of all, let's define a job structure. And it's a relative worth of various jobs based on internal comparisons. Second, we do a job evaluation, and there are different methods in which we can do a job evaluation. That's an administrative procedure used to measure internal job growth, and it's composed of some compensable factors which are characteristics of jobs that an organization values and chooses to pay. And again, job evaluators also. So again, developing a pay structure, we look at the market survey, we look at pay policy, who are we as far as our compensation strategy, and then we develop the pay grades from that. As we go through the year, the fiscal year, that is, we have to examine the difference between policy and practice and compute what's called a compa ratio. This is is a term very common within the compensation arena. And those of us who are managers, those of you who are managers, you should also be familiar with the term compa ratio. It's an index of the correspondence between actual and intended pay. So where are we paying our employees? What did we intend? And this is going to give us an idea of our labor costs, projected and actual, so we can budget accordingly. Pay structure differ across countries in level and relative worth of jobs. So what's the relative worth of a particular position within your organization? And that could vary by country. So example, teachers. What's the relative worth of teacher in the US compared to maybe China or somewhere? And there you might see some differences. Participation and communication in the process should involve those who will manage and be affected by the process. We have to be able to recommend, design, and communicate the pay program. We can have the most effective pay program, but if we do not communicate that effectively and then be able to market that as far as the total rewards are concerned to employees, they do not really know how much we are actually paying them. It's beyond the actual take-home pay. But at the end of the year, are we able to really show employees tuition benefit, the healthcare expenses and reimbursements, the environment in which we work? Many companies now go for best places to work. That in itself is a reward, actually. And the ability to grow career-wise within an organization, the span of control, all of those factors are components of total rewards and should be marketed. We have to be smart in selling whatever rewards we provide to the employees as a means of providing some sort of motivation and then be able to retain those employees in the end. Most of us have used the job-based pay structure. There's some challenges with that approach, though. Just want to highlight a few here. Uh, Reinforces top-down decision making as well as status differentials. And this is very common. Second, bureaucracy, time, and cost required to generate update job descriptions can become a barrier to change. Job descriptions are important, but how many of us actually go back even on an annual basis to update those job descriptions? And many times the job-based pay structures are derived from a job analysis, and then second, derivative of that, the job description. Job-based structure may not reward desired behaviors. So again, we have to identify the behaviors, attitudes that we are targeting that would really foster the outcomes and outputs that we are seeking. So what have we done over the years as means to manage those challenges? We've used strategies such as delaying and banding and often skill-based pay. And very effective. The whole idea of a competency-based approach to paying. So you bring a competency, you pay for that. That's a unique competency. So we pay you for that unique competency. Eight, and factors to consider when we are determining where to locate production. And this is common. We see this in the media today, and the whole idea of offshoring, outsourcing, and regardless of the terms that we're using, instability of country differences in labor cost, skill level. We see that Apple actually wants to open production factories in India, and in part that's based on the labor cost, but also the skill level that's available within the Indian society. We also have to look at productivity and then considerations other than labor costs. So uh, Apple, for example, again, using that company, they have major challenges with piracy and all of that, um, copying the copyright issues, uh, easily replicated and sold on the black market in China as an example. So again, that's a consideration beyond the labor cost issue. Executive pay, a fascinating concept and debate as to how executives are paid and the factors that go into executive pay. Remember, in the end, the equality of treatment and pay percentages has generally risen over the last 2 or 3 decades. We still have major gaps in compensation between men and women in the US on average. Um, then I just want to highlight comparable work. It's a public policy that advocates remedies for any undervaluation of women's jobs, as an example. And based on the idea that individuals should obtain equal pay not just for jobs of equal content, but jobs of equal value or worth. As we talk about compensation, we have to remember the Fair Labor Standards Act and others. Overtime pay comes into play. Require employees be paid a rate of 1.5 times the hourly rate for each hour overtime worked beyond 40 hours in a week. In the end, remember equity theory, we use this as a guide. Social comparisons influence how employees evaluate their pay. Employees make external comparisons between their pay and they believe is received. And employees make internal comparisons between what they receive and what they perceive others within their organizations are paid. We use benchmarking as a tool. We use surveys. Remember the whole idea about globalization is increasing the need to be competitive for labor costs and productivity. Again, we do not necessarily have to pay at the top of the market, but somewhere that's going to be competitive in attracting the right talent to create those competitive advantages we are seeking. And the pay structure is moving to fewer pay levels, typically within organizations today, to reduce labor costs and bureaucracy, and shifting from paying employees for narrow jobs to giving broader responsibilities. So we have to critically, again, align pay and the choices that we're making to outcomes. What are the attitudes, behaviors, competencies that we are seeking that will drive competitiveness and foster productivity? In the end, are we using strategic rewards as a means to differentiate ourselves through the human capital and create the competitive advantages? Are we attracting right candidates? Do we have the right human capital within the organization? And are we paying them appropriately and adequately in order to keep them within the organization and provide that competitiveness that we're seeking to guide us? Thank you for listening.